Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Harmony Series Part 4. So, in Part 1, we kind of learned a little bit about solfege. Part 2, we learned a little bit more using a full scale. Part 3, we learned about rounds. Now, let's go ahead and talk about some really important things, something we need to know to make it to the next part of learning harmonies. So, there are different colors of chords, believe it or not, and the color of the chord that you're singing is going to affect your harmony. So let's talk about the four different chords that we'll be typically encountering, especially if you are a singer. So this one's going to be super easy. The first one is the major. Do, mi, so, mi, do. Do, mi, so, mi, do. The thing is, if we play those chords 4 times, you could sing any of those notes and it would be in harmonic. It'd sound good. Let's start with the do. Do, do, do. Then mi. Mi, mi. Then so. So, so, so. Do, mi, so. Good. That's one of the ones we typically see. Let's go with something a little bit more difficult. We're going to change the color to minor. So what's happening here is that major third at the beginning in major is now a minor third. And now that major third or minor third that was on top from the mi to the so is now a major third. So it's a bit bigger. The solfege we tend to use for this is do, me. So mi being dropped to a me. Do, me, so, me, do. All right, let's try those solfege syllables inside this chord. Do, right? How about me, 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 and then so, 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 do, me, so, me, do. So those are the notes you end up using in a minor chord. Now there's 2 more colorations that happen frequently enough in music that we actually need to know it, and it might actually sound pretty cool to add into the songs that you're working on. So the next thing, we were talking about major thirds and minor thirds and all that stuff. Well, what happens if I have 2 major thirds stacked on top of each other? This is called an augmented chord, and this does actually occur quite frequently. In fact, if you're somebody who's into sacred music, that is music that was typically written for the church, throughout history, this type of chord would reflect anything angelic or in the heavens. Tends to be used quite frequently by a lot of different composers. So what is the solfege for this, and how on earth do we use this? Well, the solfege, do, mi, si, mi, do. That's right, the so is lifted up a half step. Do, mi, si, mi, do. We can do the same thing. Let's start with the do with these chords. Do, do, do. Mi, mi, mi. Si, si, si. Mi, mi, mi. Do, do, do. So that's an augmented chord and how we could harmonize with that. Last one. So we talked about those being 2 major thirds. What happens if I have 2 minor thirds stacked on top of each other? So this is actually called the diminished chord. And what's happening is we have a minor third and then another minor third. The solfege for this is quite strange in that most of us aren't used to modifying the solfege as much as you would need to for this particular exercise. So do is still in the bottom, do, then we have me, then say, S-E. Do, me, say, me, do. Let's try putting those into the chords like we did before. Do, 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 me, 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 say, 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 me, 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 do, do, do. All right, do, me, so, me, do. So those are the 4 colorations of chords that you'll run into the most frequently. It's really important to get used to what it sounds like when you sing a chord, especially to yourself, so you know where you can put your notes when you're singing in a song. So let's do that one more time as a quick review, and then we'll be done with this video for today. So do on the major. Do, 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 mi, 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 so, so, so. minor, do, 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 me, so, augmented, do, 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 si, and lastly but not least, diminished. Do, 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 say. All right, that's it for this video. This is kind of like a bridge video before we actually start learning to put harmony with a melody. So hopefully this will get you what you need before we start doing that. All right, thank you again for tuning in. Make sure to like and subscribe and share with a friend. See ya later. Bye.